Hey, it's Jane Boyd, and I am really happy to be here this morning with Sharon Cross. We are going to have a great conversation about childcare issues in the East Kootenay region of British Columbia. Good morning, Sharon. How are you?
Good morning, Jane. I'm well, and yourself?
I am good. We were just chatting about how it's kind of still early morning in both the places that we are in. Where am I finding you this morning?
In Cranbrook, BC.
Lovely. I love Cranbrook. It's a beautiful part of the province, isn't it?
It is. I think so.
Yeah, very, very, very much so. Yeah. So we've got some important things to talk about this morning with respect to childcare. But before we kind of dive right into that, I would love just to hear a little bit about your connection to the issue and your life a little bit in Cranbrook.
All right. I first became aware of the childcare needs in our area about 3.5 years ago, just before I was running for City Council. And so I've been following it along, and then as part of the number of committees that I sit on, I'm getting periodic updates, and it's become actually quite a concern because as a city councillor, I view it as an economic barrier in our area,
Hmm.
not just Cranbrook, but this is I think it's really all across BC, but in our region is what I'm most familiar with. And so, as someone who's wanting our community to be very livable and a desirable place to live, it is an issue, and it's what I'm hearing from business people and parents.
Yeah. I mean, as I'm having the conversations with people that are living and working in sort of the whole East Kootenay region, you're right. It's a big issue in a lot of different ways. So let's talk. I mean, since your involvement is in a couple of different ways and your interest is in a couple of different ways, uh, can you tell me just first a little bit about Cranbrook itself? Like, tell me a bit about the community and the kinds of businesses and things that exist in the community, just so that folks who might be watching can get a sense of what that part of British Columbia is like.
Sure, we have let's see, we have a population of about 19,500. We're on a major highway, the 395. We're about an hour away from the border, and we're nestled right between the Rocky Mountains and the Purcell Mountains, and it's quite a wide valley. Uh,
Hmm.
and we are the sunniest city in BC. I have to say that that's the mayor's uh, tagline for Cranbrook. Um, and we have a number of large stores. So we've got Target, which is fairly new, and Superstore, and Sport Chek just came here, and Walmart. But we have a lot of small businesses too. Like our
Hmm.
downtown core is a lot of small businesses, and most of our banks are in the downtown core. Um, our
And I was just going to say, so the predominant kinds of jobs that folks would work in then, obviously, I mean, there's sort of the retail sector, like you're talking about. What other kinds of work and employment would people be doing in the Cranbrook area?
we have Canfor here, and also so we also are in relatively close proximity to the tech mines in the Elk Valley. So a lot of our residents, and I thought at one time it was 500, that number could have changed. People lived in Cranbrook and worked in the mines. So
Okay.
4 on, 4 off, I think was the shift for most of them. And we also have uh, St. Eugene Golf Resort, and I know
Hmm.
they're really in need of childcare for their employees. So
I've been there. It's a beautiful resort. Yeah, it's very, very lovely and in close proximity to the airport as well, right?
it is. yes, yeah. Our airport is only 15 minutes away. 10, 15.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you've been hearing about these different issues with respect to childcare, what kinds of issues are you hearing about? I mean, because is it hard for folks to find quality childcare? Like, what's coming to sort of your attention?
So I've talked to a number of people. So there's um, uh, a retail outdoor. I don't know if I should say names and
No,
places.
well, just you can describe how you feel appropriate. That's all right.
A young business owner that I happen to know quite well has an outdoor equipment store. He said it's an issue for him because he has a young mother that works there and can't often get childcare to come and work. So it means he does extra shifts, and he'd rather have her working.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so there again, she's losing out on
Yeah.
her um, um, pay, and he's having to work more.
Mm-hmm.
And then I talked to the president of St. Eugene, or the CEO, he is, of St. Eugene Resort, and they're having a heck of a time with their employees. So a lot of them shift work, so can't
Mm-hmm.
childcare at night. And the same with the hospital. A hospital, I understood, was going to actually try and start their own
Right.
daycare, childcare, but it was just not feasible.
Right,
And
right. I mean, it's very complex, right? Especially when you get into shift work kinds of situations. It's not, there's no sort of cookie cutter solution, really.
that's right.
Hmm.
And then it's the cost. So if you've got see, I don't have children, so I'm just going by what others are telling me, and I think it is $700 to $800 per child per month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Is that
certainly.
about what
I
you're
mean,
hearing?
there's a range, right? And I know when we actually do, because the next part of this after we do the conversations is sort of the formal survey and study that we're doing, and so we'll have a much better idea as to the range of the fees. But yes, what you're talking about is certainly within the kinds of numbers that I'm hearing, and and higher, right? And higher, especially
Yes,
for infant toddler care.
that would be the low end of the range.
Hmm.
If you have two children, holy crow, and you're working a minimum wage, how? I don't think it is.
Right.
I don't think it's possible for people working on with minimum wage to possibly afford childcare and everything else.
Well, I mean, the bigger issue too is that even in the case of individuals and families who may in fact qualify for childcare subsidy from the province, there's often quite a large gap between what the level of the subsidy is and what the actual fees are for the childcare, right? So that's another component of it. Um, and then as well, actually being able to find the childcare, right? Whether it's licensed or licensed not required childcare. Um, this is another issue too. I have met many families who just, they just don't seem to be able to access or even know where to find care because it just doesn't appear to be available in their communities in the region.
And there's one more gap I wanted to raise,
Mhm.
and that's some young families I know here don't have family in the area,
Right.
and they're relatively new. They don't even know how to find a babysitter.
Hmm.
No, and
Hmm.
that's another level of child care that I think is one of the missing links here. Is just that casual child care piece, and
Right. Right.
it could be day and it could be evening. So that's another part of the.
I mean, it's interesting that you raised that because actually the last time that I was in Cranbrook, I actually happened to I was waiting for my flight to fly back to Vancouver, and I happened to go for dinner at a local restaurant in the area before heading to the airport. And what are the odds that the place that I would sit down would be just across from a family who was having a very in-depth childcare discussion. And I mean, it was just kind of ironic, right? I thought, okay, of all the people, places, and I'm there by myself, so it's not that I was eavesdropping, but they were having an incredibly animated discussion, and they had obviously it was a grandparent that was there with them, and there was just a huge amount of discussion about the difficulties related to childcare. And in fact, this particular family, it seems they were in the position of providing casual childcare, and there were just so many issues. It's very complicated for people to try to figure out a lot of these different kinds of things. And I thought, okay, well, if we're at the place where clearly, at the casual sort of family restaurant, the center point of discussion for a family is around childcare, not only for their own child, but for how they are, in a position of having to trade off care with another family and all the complexity around that. Clearly, there's a big issue going on in the community.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah, so, and the college too, a lot of college staff are in need of childcare.
Now, one of the things that I have heard just recently is that there's a few different programs that are actually having to close. Have you heard, like, childcare license programs that are having to close? Has that come to your attention?
Yes, the Canadian Mental Health Association, the local office here, has two childcare programs, and they're closing, I think, the end of August. Yes, wow. They've been supporting it through other program funding.
Mm-hmm.
So we're now going to be in worse shape.
So you're actually in a position of losing licensed spaces come the end of the summer. Is that sounds correct then?
Yes. So and the other part of this is the getting trained childcare workers is also a problem. We have the spaces. So here's what I'm hearing at the committee level. We have the spaces. We don't have the trained workers.
Right.
We do get them there. They leave and go elsewhere. So I don't know if that's a case of not enough pay in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are some places in town that pay their childcare workers very well, but I don't know if that's the case elsewhere. I can't say. So that's maybe something that'll come forward in the survey.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's a range, right? Again, I think, and you're right, it will come forward in the survey, but it is a range as far as the different kinds of wages that are paid. Sometimes, a lot of times, it's not a livable wage, unfortunately, and that's where part of the issue comes from. I think also because there is such what appears to be a chronic shortage of qualified staff to work in centers, that oftentimes, and in programs, that those who are qualified end up being quite stretched, right? There's a lot of programs where it seems that, those educators who are working with the young children, they're not even able to take breaks, right? So if you think about working a full shift with young children, say in an infant toddler program, and you actually cannot leave the floor due to a shortage of staff except for quickly to run to the washroom, you're eating your lunch, there's just no ability for a break. Very, very, very concerning. I mean, for myself as an educator, that's concerning because everybody needs to be able to step back for a moment and regroup, right? And I mean, even from the perspective of just being able to eat your lunch and just take a few moments before you come back to work, with young children, it's hard, right?
Right.
Yeah. So What about in terms of, you talked a little bit about it being sort of part of the economic development and a real benefit to the community. Um, so, I mean, you're really seeing that from the standpoint of being able to grow business locally and just make the community a stronger, more vibrant place that childcare plays a role.
Right. So I've heard from some of um, from the Child Development Center that they sometimes get calls from people, and I think it varies, but over a 6 month period, they might get about a dozen calls from people
Hmm.
who have been transferred here or are looking to relocate here,
Right.
asking about childcare. And if we don't have childcare, they're not coming here to take those positions. And some of those are professional positions. So,
Right.
yeah, it affects the economy. And just imagine if you have an appointment with your doctor, physician, or surgeon, and he can't make your appointments because,
Right.
or she can't get childcare. Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. It's
uh,
a ripple effect, right? Yeah. I mean, in some cases, centers I know have to sometimes close due to shortage of educators. If one educator becomes ill, then they can't actually operate at ratio according to the provincial childcare regulations. So, if you have one classroom in a program that has to close, and
oh,
say 12 babies that can't come or something,
oh,
then that's potentially 12 families that are
oh,
now impacted. So you're right. It's a huge ripple effect.
yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
um, and I know the province just a couple of months ago made available several millions of dollars for childcare spaces. And that's well and good maybe for other communities, but it
Hmm.
does nothing for us here because we have the space, we don't have the workers.
Right. Right. So do you have thoughts on what, I mean, it's a tricky, situation, and we've talked about the wages because the wages primarily parent fees are, the significant source of what contributes to um, those wages, as does in most cases there's some operating funding that comes from the province, but it's certainly not the
Hmm.
majority of the money that comes in for a budget for a child care program. I mean, do you have thoughts from your perspective as to
Oh,
ways that we can solve this issue or take steps to improve the situation?
well, just like apprenticeship training, nurse practitioner training, the doctor shortage, we have to have forward-looking leadership to look ahead and say we're in so many years we're going to have this shortage. We need to start preparing now to train
Hmm.
people to take those jobs. I just heard the other day that within 10 years we're going to lose probably 40% of our physicians because of retirement.
Hmm.
So where are the new physicians coming up? Are the federal and provincial governments gearing up for that?
Right.
So there's that part of it, and the other is making it affordable.
Hmm.
So the City of Cranbrook was one of the municipalities that signed on to the $10 a day child care.
Yes.
So we support that
Hmm.
for very obvious reasons, and I understand. And it's been a while since I've looked at the material, but I understand that Quebec instituted the $10 a day childcare, and I think it went on a sliding scale.
Yes, they instituted several, like many years ago now, a similar style program. I mean, definitely some differences, but yes, I mean, the fees. It's a very different situation in Quebec than it is in British Columbia currently right now,
Okay.
and it's I mean, it's much more affordable for families on a lot of levels, right? So we here, I mean, we're in sort of a market-based situation, as is the majority of childcare in Canada, and so it puts us in quite a, I mean, it's a real patchwork kind of unstable situation, because there's so many different things that can be happening. But I think as we see communities like yours and many communities, not only in British Columbia but other areas, they're really struggling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I would really like to see the numbers in terms of what the investment would be
Mm-hmm.
for affordable childcare, $10 or whatever it is.
Right.
Um, that kind of investment from the provincial or federal level versus the payback at getting people back to work.
Right. Right.
Because there are people who have called up the local center in tears. They're on employment insurance. They've been offered a job, but they can't find childcare.
Right.
So what there's there again.
So I mean you're raising a really important point, I think, because as much as funding can go to create new spaces, that's one piece, and actually there has been, we should point out that in British Columbia there is now additional funding to help early childhood educators, that's being administered through the Early Childhood Education or Educators of BC, so ECEBC. There's going to be some bursaries that will be available to help those who are taking their training to cover costs, and there's a certain criteria and sort of targets that that funding is, those bursaries are targeted towards. But it is a very important point that if we create spaces but we don't have the educators to put in them, or even if we do have the educators to put in them, but the reality is that the budgets in those programs can't be sustained alone with parent fees and the current level of operating funding, then we still haven't solved the problem, because those spaces, they won't be viable. They won't remain viable.
Right.
Right? And that's what you're seeing right now with the couple of programs that are closing in your community.
Yeah.
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 So so I mean, I think, as on some level it feels like kind of a depressing discussion,
Right.
but
Yeah.
but on another level we are discussing it, right? And so that's part of it. You have to have the conversation and face some of those hard truths in order to get to the place of putting things on the table and say, okay, well, how are we as a community, working together to do what we can, and then to bring in the other partners, provincially or federally, or however that may be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the results of all your good work.
Yeah. Well, it's a collective effort, and truly it's a joy to have conversations, like with people like you, and just to get all of the different perspectives from the communities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if people want to get in touch with you for any reason, Sharon, how would they find you? What would be the best way for them to connect with you?
I think my home phone number, I get calls all the time, and so they could call me at home. It's do you want my phone number?
Well, I mean, I don't. If whatever you're comfortable to say, I will put the contact information when I write the blog post about our conversation. But if whatever you feel comfortable with, I'm good with.
Phone me. I get a lot of phone calls, and as a city councillor, I signed up for it. So.
Yes, absolutely.
Anyway, so it's 250-489-4412.
Excellent. Very good. Well, thank you so much for being part of this and contributing your thoughts and wisdom to the discussion, because it's complex, but at the same time, we really want to work together to arrive at some solutions that will improve the situation, not only in Cranbrook, but in sort of the whole East Kootenay region of BC.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks a lot, Jane, for getting up early.
You too. You take care now, okay? Have a great rest of the day.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.